Thank you for that very perceptive introduction. And I'm happy to be here. I welcome you all with love. And I'm going to say a little prayer, which is kind of the key to the really diabetes, to the obesity, and to life, not just in America, but all over the place. Okay? And it's about merging the heavens and the earth, the heart and the mind. Okay, so this is the prayer, and we'll just kind of contemplate that for a moment. Hashem Yikud Kudusha Brihu Ushahinte Bi Ilu Ar Imulaihed Shem Yuke Bavke Yidar Shem Hashem Kozrael Kolam Amen. Just feel that merging of heart and mind. Okay. So that's a little bit about me. This is me kind of meditating in full lotus here at the where I live. And it actually does snow. And we're 4,000 feet up, about 20 minutes from the border of Mexico. So it's an interesting kind of play. But the air is clean, and it's a good way to be. So this is key to understanding why the talk on diabetes is important. And when health is absent, wisdom can't reveal itself. What I see with a lot of diabetics, we rank your mental state and your memory and so forth, is the mind function goes down. That's key, because they don't mention it really in the books. It's just obviously noticeable. Thinking is off. Memory is off. And even in 3 weeks, people go from 0 to 10, 10 being really good. People go from 4 to 9 or 10 in terms of memory and clarity of mind. And that's a subtle concept, clarity of mind. It really makes a difference. What happens with type 2 diabetes is you rapidly increase the rate of brain degeneration. The size of the brain shrinks twice, I won't say twice as fast, but over a 6-year period, twice as much. Okay, so your brain shrinking, the brain gets insulin resistant, so you can't get fuel to the brain to work right. And really in 3 weeks, we pull a lot of people out of that. So there are real things that happen. Okay? And from my point of view, having a functioning brain is pretty important. And not to make you feel bad, but people in their, quote, middle ages, 45 to, let's say, 65, about 80% of the people have a blood sugar greater than 85. Optimum is 70 to 85. Non-diabetic is 100 or less, fasting blood sugar, and first thing in the morning, fasting blood sugar of 126 is considered diabetes. So you have pre-diabetes, 100 to 125, but optimal. And 80% of the population has a blood sugar more than 85. Fasting blood sugar in the morning. Anyone here ever check their blood sugars? Okay. I do check mine. And so here I am, closer to 76, it's 82. Okay. And it takes a little work, but it's really, really important. So if there's any blood test you want to do a little finger stick and take your blood sugar, okay? Because it will give you a clue what's going on. Because let me put it this way. By the age of 65, 27% of the population has diabetes. 27%, that's huge, okay? So from age 20 to 30 to 60, I didn't say 65, but 60, around that, it's around 10 and then it's creeping up. And at 65, 27%. So we need to give it real attention. And it doesn't just happen. It just creeps up. So we have about 30 million diabetics, roughly speaking, and as I speak, it's already out of date. Just like they said, it's out of date. And about 86 million pre-diabetics. So kind of getting the picture. And I don't know why this is, but after 55 to 65, there's an enzyme that goes off in the system that makes you make more sugar from your own liver. So it's what we call endogenous. Within the system, you're making your own sugar. Makes it even worse. So it's kind of interesting how this process happens. So I'm giving you an overview of why it's important to people who are non-diabetic. Okay, it's a key thing. So when health is absent, your mind doesn't work so well. With diabetes, your mind really doesn't work so well. Okay? You can't be creative, art can't manifest, strength can't fight because you're actually, we'll see, you have kidney weakness and neurological weakness. Lots of things begin to happen, which we'll get into. And wealth, which people spend their lives trying to accumulate, is useless because you can't think and you can't really move around. Okay? So we can't really use our minds. So that's why it's important. Now, I've made a shift, which is part of my game plan. Since I started the center in 1993, I've been vegan since 1973. But doing the Tree of Life Foundation and the center, I'm now going more outward. We have 26 programs around the world, and a lot of them are diabetes prevention programs. We're spoken in 40 countries, and we have programs in 13 different countries. So that kind of gives you an idea of kind of where my energy is going. This is where we are. This is called Shaktipat, which we will be doing. It's a descent of grace that can awaken the Kundalini. Tomorrow morning, I'll be teaching the Tri Yoga and Shaktipat meditation. Also Saturday morning, and a little bit on Sunday in terms of the getting to the airline. So after the Shaktipat, we have the awakening, and I don't know if you can see the rainbows going to the third eye and to the heart. If that shows up there. Shows up on this picture. And this is some of the foods that we get. This is, live food is not a deprivation. I think that's my point here. You can just take a look at that. It's really quite good. So we still maintain some of this food. We're in a transition right now, and we are still doing inipis. We just did our first inipi in the new place, and this is me as a sun dancer. I'm what we call a pipe carrier. So I'm giving we're doing an inipi. That's my wife's, what we call Native American, my half side. And here we are doing ceremony. This is with Dennis Banks. He was he unfortunately, a personal friend. He cured his diabetes, but he did just recently leave his body. Here we are with the white buffalo. That's my son and granddaughter on the left. This is my granddaughter. Here we are. White buffalo is very symbolic in that. And this is key. You may have noticed a little bit of global cooling. How many people have noticed that we're having some global cooling? Okay, it's all over the country. It just isn't New York City, okay? And I wrote a paper about 2 years ago looking at the cycles, which in 1815, for example, there was no summer in the United States because they were in global cooling. 1812 is when Napoleon got frozen out in Russia. So So that was a period of global cooling. Now we're going back in the global cooling. We finished global warming. Now, global warming, and now we're going in global cooling. This is a special way of dealing with it because this works totally off the grid. And because global cooling is not good, it's a problem. It means people historically, literally, huge starvations, really difficult weather. You can't grow crops, right, because it's too cold. So I'm giving you warnings, okay? Whenever this has happened, it's been bad for humanity. So this is a little bit what we're doing. We grow our sprouts. Everything is indoors. We're switching to an indoor growing approach. This is us doing Shabbat. There will be Shabbat tomorrow, somewhere around 5:05. I'm not sure what room. This is Shanti and I doing a little yoga. Don't try to do this unless you got a little practice. Make a mistake here. It's not good, especially for the person on the bottom. Me, right? But it's fun to do. Here we are, both sitting in full lotus, flexibility at any age. With live foods, you really do get stronger, and you really do get more flexible. You have to keep working at it. It all goes away if you don't do that. So when I was 60, I did 601 push-ups. Okay. And that was a 6th day of a fast, juice fast. So you can get strong with age. When I was playing football at Amherst College, captain of the team, National Football Hall of Fame, I could do 60 push-ups, 70 push-ups. Okay? Here we are 40 years later. So don't buy the myth that you get weaker or less flexible with age. I could barely touch. This is how far I can do when I was playing football, rather than flat on the floor. So you can be more flexible, you can be stronger, and actually improve brain function with age if you pay attention. Here I am. I'm in Jerusalem. This is a very famous sheikh. His family's lived in that home since the 16th century. And we're just talking. We're doing a juice fast in Israel, and people are gathered in different ways. I'm talking about veganism here. Israel has 8.6% of the population is vegan. Highest population of vegans in the world. We have at least 2% in the United States, which is good. We're at the Dead Sea. I'm just going through it. And this is in California, where I used to live. Again, talking about all this. This is one of our diabetes prevention things that we're also teaching vegan nutrition there. This is the School of the Deaf in Nigeria. Both are in Nigeria. This is deaf mute in Nigeria, where we have programs, put water systems in. Otherwise, they have to carry the water for a mile. And here's some of the people I'm working with. This is they named the health center after me in Ghana. I didn't ask them, they just did it, so I couldn't reverse it. This is key. We are putting in fresh water in 53 different well sites, 53 wells in Ghana. Now, why? Well, you got Ebola, you got all these things going on. You've got to have fresh water. It's just fundamental. When we're talking about prevention, you got to start there. So we're putting a lot of our energy into those kind of projects. This is great. This is in Cameroon, and we're doing. It's a live food restaurant, which is so cool. Here I am speaking to about 900 people in Ghana. These are people from all the different tribes. This is one of our people from. It's in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia, and she has a senior center. We do a lot. This is all live food. So we're teaching that all over the place. This is the senior center. And here I am in Ethiopia giving lectures, medical school in Ethiopia, Cameroon. This is all run by, this is a sewing center run by diabetics, because we really got to get people to be employed. Here's some of our work in Mexico, kind of across the border there. Here's Shanti and I, and then live food. So we have a bunch of programs in Mexico, and everybody's moving to organic, veganic farming. That's the point. This is Benjamin Hill. It's the last stop when our people kind of coming up from the south. There's a whole train thing there. And so we have a center there, and we're initiating the center. That's the mayor and his wife. So we feed a lot of people who come through. This is Buenos Aires and Brazil, where we're doing a lot of the projects and things. So, and this is Papua New Guinea. I don't know, they have like 55% of the people have diabetes. While I was there for a few days, 2 people on their ruling board died of diabetes. And this is Bali. That's the governor and his sister, who's a doctor who I work with. So we have projects going on all over. And this is, they just, last year, Shanti and I. So that's an overview. And so we're not just sitting here talking. We are really trying to bring the idea of organic, veganic nutrition and diabetes prevention and spirituality to the world. We've had people from over 130 countries come to our center, but my work is that way. And that's what you're hearing about. That's the context to understand what this is about. Okay? That the diabetes isn't all we're curing. Diabetes, it's good to do that. But it's a whole way of going back, like what we say in Africa, to the natural ways. Everybody gets it. We're kind of removed from the natural ways here, which is a little bit of a problem. But it's one generation there. So here's the myth. Diabetes isn't curable. Diabetes has no cure, according to the New York Times, which it's not anything I read, but somehow I found this, okay? It's incurable, an urgent health problem in the Latino community. It's true. Diabetes is incurable. You keep hearing it. It's like, what? That's just a belief system. It's absolutely curable. However, it's not curable if you don't know where you're going. If you walk in the wrong direction, you will always end up in the wrong spot. It's a no-brainer. So, but if you kind of understand what it's about, it's really quite curable. And that's the good news. And here we see it moving, and you can see in the Middle East it's a bigger problem. But watch this. This is now projections 2025, and they're already out of date, but you can see Mexico, U.S. and Canada are increased, but the Middle East is really intense. And what you see down below is Brazil, where I'm doing a lot of work. They have a pretty high conscience about a lot of vegans. I spoke to about 200 lawyers, vegan lawyers, in Rio de Janeiro. It's like, what? I can't imagine a lawyer being vegan, more or less 200 of them. What's going on? So it's quite interesting, okay? So we do have a major epidemic worldwide. What Steve was saying is absolutely, we've got an issue here. Obesity, and I'll say it, you'll see the chart. 82% of diabetics are overweight, and 48% are obese. That means more than 30 pounds overweight. And it's just skyrocketing. So, they're thinking by 2050, 1 out of 3, but really, it's probably already there. We're very close to that kind of situation. So these are some results with our diabetes approach. So you have the American Diabetic Association, ADA, 22 weeks. You have Bernard's work. Neil Bernard is very good, but it's cooked vegan, 22 weeks. And here we are at 3 weeks. So we drop, our average person we're seeing is 200, blood sugar is 247, which is really pretty high, okay? So by the end of 3 weeks, it's down to 86. That's quite a statement. And if you look at Neil Barnard's 22 weeks on the vegan thing, there really is a drop of 35 points. And the ADA, we got a drop of, 34 points. And here we have 161 points. That's significant. Okay, drop. Weight loss the same, 18 pounds. I've had people lose literally 45 pounds in 3 weeks. We are not focusing on weight. It just happens when you come back to normal. So our rate was in 3 weeks now, a lot higher after 3 weeks. But in 3 weeks, 61% of the people who are non-insulin dependent are diabetes free. That means no medications and a blood sugar of 100 or less. Okay? And for people on insulin, 24% are cured, okay? And about 86% are off insulin. That's high. For type 1 diabetics, which was actually a surprise to me, to be honest with you, 21% of the people were healed, meaning type 1, off insulin, with a blood sugar less than 100. That's shocking. It took me a while to figure out what was going on, but it works, okay? And about 31% were off insulin, but 21% were cured. Cured, what is that? Less than 100, blood sugar less than 100, no medication. So we get real results, and that's the point. It's like, we aren't just talking about it. This is really simple. It's not incurable. That's the key. It's not even close to being incurable. So what is it? Let's take a bigger picture. Let's not look at blood sugar, but it is good to check your blood sugar in the morning and see how you're doing, at least until you're like under 85, okay? Not age, your blood sugar, your fasting blood sugar. Okay, it's an accelerated chronic degenerative disease. Think that way. It's degeneration of multiple systems. And as I said before, you got twice as much Alzheimer's, significant degeneration in the brain function, and 4 times more depression. So a lot of things are happening. So we have a change in the genetic and epigenetic. Now we're talking more epigenetic, change your diet. That actually influences your gene expression, literally, okay? And it's a hormonal dysregulation, and it isn't just insulin, but it's also leptin, which we'll talk about a little bit. But leptin does 2 things. Normal leptin, says don't eat sweets and stop eating. Cut down your diet. When people are overweight, leptin is produced in the fatty tissue. You have an excess of leptin, and the body gets leptin resistant. That's a problem. It's something that grows over time. So insulin resistance, leptin resistance are big players in the whole diabetes story. That's what I want you to really get. And it's protein, lipid, carbohydrate problems. So think that, and then think one more thing. Chronic inflammation. Meat, fish, chicken are inflammatory. That's why people who eat meat, fish, and chicken have 35 to 50% higher incidence of diabetes, because it's inflammatory. There are other problems which you're going to get to. I just want you to hear that. Fish, fat, destroys the beta cells of the pancreas very actively. People who have fish 2 times a week literally have a much higher rate of diabetes. Other meats also do that. Fat is a problem. Animal fat is a problem. That's what you need to hear. Cholesterol, vegan fat is not a problem. I'll put it that way. Now, this is kind of mind-blowing because I have to tell you this because it's for your protection. Women with a cholesterol of 270 live 28% longer. Did you hear what I just said? 28% longer, women with a cholesterol of 270. That's pretty significant. And that was a major study with hundreds of thousands of people. So the message is don't worry about the fat as long as it's plant fat. We also know that cholesterol between 160 and 260 has no effect on heart disease. So don't worry about it. I'll tell you what you want to worry about. If your cholesterol goes below 160, okay, you're going to have 4 times more depression and somewhere between 4 to 6 times more suicide. You're going to have more neurological degeneration. Not so cool. Your brain will not work as well. Cognition improves with higher cholesterol. So kind of see the bigger picture here. Don't worry about cholesterol, but just stay away from animal fat. There's a difference. That's what I'm trying to make. Plant fat is different. That's what you really got to get. And keeping that in mind, then we can proceed. Okay? Now what also? So we're looking at sugar, animal protein, and animal fat. Those are your big players. Not getting enough sleep is an issue. If you aren't getting 7 hours of sleep, your blood sugar will go up. This research was done in Melbourne, Australia. Okay, toxic exposure, heavy metals, there's many things that go on. But those are your big 3. Okay? Sugar, that includes fructose, but not directly. Fructose doesn't directly raise your blood sugar. Indirectly, it definitely is associated with more diabetes. And when they introduced fructose into the general diet in the 1980s, there was literally a 90% increase in 2 years of diabetes. It just does it because it creates a disorganization of leptin insulin signaling, and it creates fatty liver disease, which disrupts liver function and how to handle things. So it does it indirectly, not as directly. So don't think having lots of fructose is a way of getting around it. It isn't. The clear fructose, cancer cells love glucose 10 times more than normal cells. Cancer cells love fructose 10 times more than they love glucose. You follow that? So fructose really feeds cancer cells. And that's why when Brian and I were in the same position, just hold on the food issue while you're trying to cure cancer, okay? But there's really more to it. Excess fructose is associated with much higher rates of diabetes, prediabetes, heart disease, stroke, high blood pressure, kidney stones, gout, and general neurological degeneration. So it's just important to keep those in mind. So, oh, hey, I'm not having glucose. Fructose is fine. No, it isn't, okay, in the level we're talking about. Not for diabetes, not for protecting against cancer. Fructose also does something else. It activates the glia cells in the brain 10 times more. Well, so what? Well, I'll tell you what, so what. When the glia cells are overactivated, we get brain inflammation. And we get neuronal degeneration, and actually brain cells die. So that's not so good either. So the fructose, I'm saying we're going to hold on that. So basically the body goes into a reset. This is the key. It creates a toxic metabolic memory. And it isn't just about blood sugar. It's a total hormonal picture, and the body goes into this epigenetic toxic memory. And the treatment of diabetes is turning off this toxic epigenetic memory. That's it. It's a whole different concept. the lifestyle that we talk about, the live food, they all play major roles in turning off that toxic metabolic memory. It does include going organic. It does really include initially the 100% live food and meditating and breathing. I will be teaching breathing exercises tomorrow also. So it's all those things. So we just have to kind of see the big picture. It's got to turn off the diabetes degenerative syndrome, the toxic metabolic memory. If we just get that one concept, you'll understand what it's about. So the metabolic memory, and that's for type 1 and type 2. And this is also why I'm not here to talk about type 1, but 88% of type 1 diabetics, no matter what age, are producing some insulin. And the key to why we healed it, it took me a while to figure this out, is that if we can lower the blood sugar by proper diet, it can match 88% of the people producing insulin with type 1, and that's how we cure 21% of type 1 diabetics. We just take their sugar input down, and that's the key thing. And we turn off the inflammatory organs. So this is part of that famous movie. These people walked up to the top of the mountain. To see the mountain that was behind me when I was meditating, that's at 6,000 feet. And they could barely walk when they came in. Here they are at the end of the story. So I've talked about fructose, and we'll talk about soft drinks. But these are all the things that we're looking at that contribute. So for example, they did a study with men watching TV for 19 hours a week will have a 150% increase in rates of diabetes. We don't know exactly what it is. Maybe it's also true for women. They did the study in men, but it's obviously not a lot of activity and probably eating a lot while you're watching TV. And we'll cover some of the other things. Statin use research varies from literally, on the average, the study showing a 40 to 80% increase in diabetes with the use of statin. Some say 9%. There's some variables. And vaccines for type 1 diabetes. What's that about? Well, vaccines, as you probably know, have a lot of antigens in them. Besides they have aluminum, they have this, they have that. And that's to stimulate the immune response. But what happens is the body gets confused and starts making antibodies against the beta cells of the pancreas, which produce insulin. So vaccines have been associated, depending on the study, between 60 to 147% increase in type 1 diabetes, particularly if you get the MMR or something like that before 3 months. So just kind of an overview of what that's about, that they literally, the vaccines stimulate an autoimmune response, which is what type 1 diabetes is, was type 2, it's a nutritional diet. Lack of exercise plays a role. Wheat, soy, they all have excitotoxins in them, or they have excitotoxins, and you have soy in the grain brain type thing, which inflames the system. So all these chronic sources of inflammation. EMS. I think you're starting to hear about 5G, which I actually just did a 11-page paper on, really explaining the 5G. I'm just going to... I have diabetics, they call it type 3 diabetes, which is when they go into higher electromagnetic field, their blood sugar shoots up. There are actually places in the United States where you can go that are low EMF fields. When we hit 5G, that's all gone. 5G is a really huge toxin to your health. Plus, at 5G and the 20,000 satellites they're planning to put up in a few years, we are talking about a disruption of the Schumann resonance and the global electric circuit. I'm just curious, how many people have ever heard of that? Okay, so the Schumann resonance and global electric circuit are what the whole planet is attuned to. Okay? not just your pancreas and getting a rise in blood sugar. The earth, the animals, the insects, and of course the humans are tuned to these two different frequencies. When that's thrown off of 5G, we get all kinds of health problems, which is exactly what we get. I'll just leave it like that. But it's a definite problem for people who don't necessarily have diabetes, but they go into the field and their blood sugars shoot up. I've been seeing this for years. The 5G is going to really amplify that. So it's something to keep in mind. Maybe next year I'll talk about 5G. But radiation is another thing. In Fukushima, 60% of the kids 12 and under developed type 2 diabetes who were living in Japan. Okay, that's pretty significant, to say the least. When they've done other radiation things with nuclear testing or Chernobyl, the average increase was 200% in the rate of type 1 and type 2 diabetes. I'm talking in Fukushima, I'm talking 60% of the population. But in these other, you're doubling your rate of diabetes. So radiation is a real problem. We have some definite ways to deal with that. Psychotropic drugs are another problem, and depression. Within 1 year of a serious depression, depending on the study, 62 to 82, there's a 62 to 82% increase in diabetes, in type 2 diabetes. So within 1 year of a severe depression, your whole diabetes thing gets up. So that gives you a little bit of an overview. It's a little bit more complex. These are all the references because it's good to know. I'm making statements based on the literature. So, what are the two main causes? Review? Okay, I'm not going to quiz you too much, okay? Sugar, okay? High animal fat intake. Those are your two big players. And also, I'm going to say, high animal protein. During World War I, World War II, when sugar wasn't available, the rate of diabetes went down. Okay? There you see it happening. So clearly sugar is an issue. Fructose, I already said it's indirectly related. It's not safer. Fructose really is associated with a higher rate, besides how fast it got. You know, from 1980 to 1997, there was a 2,100% increase in fructose and a huge bump up in that. And I mentioned that. See, I kind of laid things out, and I'm reviewing it for you, okay, as we go through it. So fructose disorders a lot of our regulation. It also creates glycation products. And what happens is that the glucose or fructose binds unnaturally with protein and deactivates it. And that includes the DNA, includes hemoglobin. That's how you measure, really, for diabetes, one of the tests. It's, oh my goodness, because it greatly accelerates the glycation process. And as I say, well, I didn't say this, but it's 10 times more active in creating ages. A lot of cancer cells, particularly pancreas, loves it. Inflammation of the brain, which is key to Alzheimer's as well. So it mixes up the insulin and leptin signaling, as I explained. And it doesn't block ghrelin, which is the hormone that lets us know we're full. Maybe some of you notice you're not always able to block that cycle, but fructose blocks it. So we don't get the feedback system. So a lot of people with fructose end up being overweight because that system isn't turned off. Okay? But glucose does that. It does turn it off. Okay, so this is what we're explaining. It will block the leptin, which says stop eating and stop craving sweets. We can handle about 15 to 25 grams of fructose without getting out of balance. The average American runs about 81 milligrams, okay? And here are the things, I mentioned them before: heart disease, hypertension, gout, obesity, which we just explained because it's not turning off the ghrelin, which says stop eating, and it mixes up the leptin insulin signaling. Kidney stones, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which is 2 to 3 times higher, okay, it's worth understanding, in people who are having a higher fructose diet, which unfortunately tends to be more of your fruitarians than your people eating a lot of fruit. Brain inflammation I mentioned because it's 10 times more active, overstimulating the glia cells. Obviously cancer and accelerated aging. So it's a problem. Fructose is not an alternative. The truth is, the only thing it doesn't seem to raise blood sugar is stevia, okay, is probably the main one. And there's just a little bit more. But okay, this is soft drinks. They're a big problem. Artificial sweeteners are a huge problem for people. And they really do increase your rate of diabetes more than regular soft drinks. I'm not recommending soft drinks. One of our things in Africa is, hey, go to water, because a soft drink is seen as a nice social thing to do when somebody visits. Stop that. Let's go back to clean water rather than soft drinks. So what happens is the artificial sweeteners are broken down and they confuse the gut bacteria and they increase the rates of diabetes. Aspartame is like a big player. So the data is kind of interesting. Okay, 1 can of soda per week increases the rate of type 2 diabetes by 33%. 2 cans, 50%. And if you go to synthetic aspartame, it's going to be at least 15 to 60% higher. I give you variables because the research is about trends. It's not such hard data all the time. Okay? So, but about 15 to 50% depending. Here I say 60%, but I give you the range. So this is what Robert Lessig says is that if you're doing soft drinks, you're 10 times more likely to get type 2 diabetes. That's a little bit higher than the results are suggesting, but it's in there. So I call it diabetes. Diet sodas. Sodas are bad. Diet sodas are a much bigger problem. So we'll look at 18% 25% reduction when you're not having the soft drinks. So you're getting the idea there, okay? So here I say 25 to 1,000% increase in diabetes. So there's some variability here, but whatever it is, even 25% is big. If it's 1,000, then it's, like Lustwood was saying, it's way big. Okay, so here's a point I want to make, is that insulin secretion, if you kind of look at that, the blue is glucose and the red is insulin. So what we see when we go to beef, you can see it in eggs and fish, is you'll have a lot more over-secretion of insulin, which eventually leads you to insulin resistance. And that's the key. So here we got the diabetes thing saying this is good for you. Well, again, you go in the wrong direction, you do end up in the wrong direction. And they're right. If you do this, it's incurable, for sure. Okay? So this is a combination of 12 different studies. It basically says 35 to 50% people eating meat, fish, chicken, increase in type 2 diabetes. That's what we're talking about, the overall thing. So a quarter pound of beef raises your insulin as much as a quarter pound of straight sugar. That should be making the point, okay? If you're doing cheeseburgers, it's even higher with the different things. So I want to get to, that's the overview, and I want to get to animal fat toxicity, because it's kind of newer in people. How many people have heard, just from my own feedback, about animal fat toxicity to the beta cells of the pancreas? A little bit. One. There's one person. Okay. So that tells you this is new information. It's good to know. So it's a major player, and that's why we're looking at 35 to 50% more type 2 diabetes in people eating meat. This is one of the big players, okay? And what happens is, on the physical level, it tends to block the insulin function both out of the cell and inside the cell. It makes our muscle cells insulin resistant. It doesn't seem to do it with plant fat, that's what I'm saying. And that's our problem. So the insulin resistance is a key, one of the keys to building diabetes, okay? And it may build up over years. It just takes a while to get there. So what happens, the pancreas is, the body's getting resistant to insulin, the pancreas keeps pumping out more insulin, and then what happens is that the beta cells get exhausted. That's what we're talking about, okay? So, and also fat begins to build up in the pancreas, and because the animal fat's too much, and so it builds up first in the muscles, then in the liver, and then very low density lipoproteins then get pushed out of the liver, and they tend to accumulate in the beta cells of the pancreas. So lots of problems. So you can actually think about type 2 diabetes as an excess of animal fat in our organs, in our cells. It's not the only thing, okay? Because as I say, they actually kill the beta cells of the pancreas, particularly fish. Fish fat's the most toxic, okay? So we have insulin resistance and a failing pancreas from the fat. Now, you can add 1 and 1 and get 2. Obviously, obesity, fat, was going to lead to increased insulin and really leptin resistance. And the high insulin is associated also with promoting cancer. That's actually really important. But that's not our topic right now. So we got saturated animal fats a problem. Trans fats, which are more common in animal, are a problem. Animal protein by itself is a problem because it has leucine in it, which specifically attacks the beta cells of the pancreas. This is a new piece of information. Leucine, methionine, they attack and destroy the beta cells of the pancreas, which explains again why there's more diabetes, 35 to 50% more in people who are eating meat. Okay? The other thing is heme iron in the animal protein creates a lot of free radicals. And free radicals tend to create ages, and ages accelerate the rate of diabetes, okay? Because it's oxidative stress and chronic inflammation. So the iron is doing that. That's one of the reasons people think why women live longer, because they have lower iron in their system. That changes once women go through menopause. That changes. But up to that time, there's less iron, so you're having less oxidation, less free radicals, less diabetes. So the advanced glycation end products are all increased with oxidative stress and inflammation. So we got trans fats are a problem, and I call them glycotoxins, but these things stimulate inflammation. And these are the markers the literature shows. Tumor necrosis factor, C-reactive protein, which is what I use to test on everybody, and vascular adhesion molecules. C-reactive protein tells me how much inflammation. our people come in highly inflamed, and even by the end of 3 weeks, the inflammation is often returns to normal. It's dropped by threefold in 3 weeks. So that's the problem. Now, leucine and methionine, I just mentioned it. How many people heard of the mTOR pathway? Okay, that's the optimal path. That's the pathway for optimal longevity. Okay, that's a key thing, and optimum prevention of cancer. The average need, depending on your range, is 35 to 70 grams of protein a day. Now, what happens is that the leucine and methionine overstimulate the thing, and we get an imbalance in the mTOR pathway, which also increases diabetes. Okay, so the leucine levels are much, much, much lower in vegan diets. Okay, a joke here: 9 pounds of cabbage or 100 apples a day, the equal amount of leucine you get from eating meat on a daily basis. So it's pretty, it isn't a vegan diet, right? But it's nowhere near, because we're talking about that. So it's just good to understand. So what do we do? In summary, animal fats kill the beta cells. Just kind of get that. That's new information. It's really important to get. Fish is the worst. Okay? So if we're going to decrease animal fat, we'll decrease insulin levels, decrease insulin resistance, and that's good. Fat blocks insulin metabolism. It's really animal. Okay, so sugar, glucose, fructose, animal fat, we got problems. And also, and as I say, it destroys the beta cells, increases insulin resistance, blocks insulin receptors on your cells throughout the body, and blocks the signaling inside the cells. It's not good for us. Okay? It blocks what we call the GLUT4 receptors that kind of come out to the edge of the cell to pull sugar in. A lot of problems. So, high fat, animal fat. So, then we're saying, is it about calories, which is the way a lot of people talk, or is it the nature of the food? Obviously, it's the nature of the food is primary. Animal-based nutrition versus vegetable-based nutrition. Now, what also happens is, and I'm not sure what the reason is, but it's good, estrogen tends to stimulate diabetes. Vegan, vegetarian women secrete 2 to 3 times more estrogen than meat-eating women. That's protective. That's a good thing. Okay? So, vegan, vegetarian women have lower estrogen, which is, again, healthy. Now, what are other problems with animal tissue? Less fiber, right? Less antioxidants, and more inflammation. We have to understand that eating meat inflames the whole system. And that, remember, chronic inflammation is the driving force. That's the key when we're eating meat. It's a driving force behind type 2 diabetes. It's actually a driving force behind type 1 diabetes as well, but for a different reason. Okay. Leucine, methionine are a problem. They increase the rate of aging. Okay. Now, this is interesting. Okay, meat's higher in saturated fat. It's also acidic. So acidity increases the rate of diabetes. We got a 56% increase in diabetes with that. Low fiber. So meat increases insulin resistance. When you're cooking meat, when you're cooking anything, it's baked, processed, grilled, it's all going to increase ages. Okay. And ages create free radicals. Free radicals activate, type 1 and type 2 diabetes, as well as the rate of aging. So it all starts to come together. So plants also have antioxidants, whereas meat doesn't, that help quench the free radical inflammation. You see how it all kind of weaves together, and you get to understand it more too. So phytonutrients, when you cook food, you lose 95% of the phytonutrients. You really don't want to do that. So our diet is 100% live food as we're treating the diabetics, and then once they're 3 months with a blood sugar less than 100, then we do different herbal supplements, and we'll stop those, and they still stay in 100, then they can go to 80% live, 20% cooked vegan. One of our type 1 diabetics, who's been really good for years and years, 12 years at this point, he wrote me and said, I started to eat fish, and my blood sugars are going up. So what's the problem? I said, well, just stop eating fish and see what happens. Blood sugars went down to the went down to the low 80s again. So that's what we're talking about. The lipotropes which you get in again a vegan diet, plant-based diet, decrease the inflammation, okay, and they help deal with the fat type situation. So these are, this is what I just said about the vegan, vegetarian women secrete 2 to 3 times more estrogen. That's good, remember that, okay? So women who are eating meat have 50% higher estrogen. In the big picture, that's not good. It's driving diabetes and it's driving cancer in different ways. So we have really interesting results with the plant-based diet. Even if people, they're given the instructions and they don't really follow it, they do 1 of 5 things, there's still a 50% drop. They follow all 5, 100% prevention. It's kind of interesting. And I'll look at one more thing in this. The question is, well, what if I eat a little bit of meat? How many people have ever been asked that, had that thought? Well, so they did a study with Buddhist monks. The women eating 3% meat, and the other women were totally vegan. Did it with men. Men eating about 8% meat, and versus the Buddhist monks who are vegan. What they found is if the women eating 3% meat had 4 times greater incidence of diabetes. The men eating 8% meat had double the rate of type 2 diabetes. So even these little percentages actually makes a difference. That was a really cool study. It's like, okay, somebody asked the question. It's like, well, I mean, I can't tell you how many times people say, well, what if I have a little bit of meat? Well, no. If you're worried about diabetes, no meat. And you're going to, if you're a woman, you're going to cut down your rate of diabetes by 4-fold. And if you're a man, by half. So there's your answer, so you don't even have to ask the question, okay? So this is the Buddhist study that I just was talking about. It's just amazing. At 3%, you're going to get 4-fold more diabetes. Wow, okay? And I mentioned if you're eating fish twice a week, you're going to have a 38% increased risk of diabetes. So I'm answering some of the questions here that are key. Now this is unusual, but this is one study found that people having fish oils, DHA, EPA, from fish actually have an increase in blood sugar. That's a little shocking, but we don't recommend the DHA and EPA from fish anyway. I suspected something like that. You can get it from where the fish get it, which is from yellow algae. There's no problem. You still get adequate EPA and DHA. And later not now, but we'll talk about brain health. And you need your EPA and DHA. You need about 1,200 of DHA and about 400 to 600 EPA to have optimal brain function. That's kind of key. That's the thing. So I said, fish eaters have a 38% higher risk if you're just eating it. I'm going to say, 35% increased risk of diabetes versus a meat eater at 19%. That's really, really interesting. Now, what about eggs? How is that a problem? Well, if you eat one egg a week, just one egg, you're increasing your rate of diabetes by 76%. Okay? And obviously, if you're doing one a day, you're going to increase it. And eggs increase overall all-cause mortality. So 2 eggs per week doubles the rate of diabetes. 3 eggs per week triples it. Or 1 egg per day triples it. Okay? So eggs don't really do the trick. Unless you want to get diabetes, they'll do the trick for that. Okay? Eggs aren't really good for multiple reasons, even though they're high in protein. And not to divert, but we do need to understand that chlorella spirulina, blue-green algae from Klamath Lake are 60 to 70% protein, about 95% absorbed, whereas eggs are 40% of their protein absorbed. But you got all this not so good for diabetes, not so good for health. So here we are back in kind of some of the topics I talked about. This is the obesity. If you look at the top, just a simple, you can see that the percentage of overweight, it's about 82% in the, for that. Now, antibiotics are something people don't know about as a problem. The fluoroquinolones are the most problematic. And, Avalox, Levaquin, Cipro. If you have more than 5 treatments in 17 years, you're going to increase your rate of diabetes by 50%. So they do something with your colon bacteria that upsets it, okay? And that's the key thing. I said 17 years, it's 15 years. 17 years is for Cipro, I think. But that's what we're looking at. So 5 courses of antibiotic within 17 years, 15%, 50% greater. So think about that and say, I need to take antibiotics. I don't take, there's so many ways to treat people without antibiotics, unless you have an acute, life-threatening infection in your blood or something. You really can get through with that. Now, if you have 2 to 4 prescriptions of antibiotics in 17 years, you're going to have a 23% increase. So that's a problem. Statin therapy, now, we're different genetics here. So Caucasian women are 49% increase in type 2 diabetes, Hispanic 57%, and Asian women are 78%. That's where I got my 40 to 80% increase. There's a range there. We are actually a little genetically different and have different levels of vulnerabilities. So increases in blood sugar, 7 points in non-diabetics, but 39 points in diabetics when you're using statins. It's really a problem. Okay, I mentioned the cholesterol, and this is the study. 52,000 people studied, approximately between ages of 20 and 74, and they basically have 28% longevity if it's at 270 versus women at 193 or less. So I hope that kind of readjusts your thinking a little bit. It's not a problem. Whether it's 160 or 260, it's not a problem for your heart. So that is not a good reason to be vegan. The big thing is low cholesterol. This is the big research. It kind of validates what I just said. No evidence to support widespread mythical belief that limiting saturated fat intake is beneficial or protective for heart health or longevity. And most holistic physicians already got that. The general population doesn't quite get that. There's a lot of money to be made. Now here's the real problem. I already told you, now I'm reviewing it so you really get it in your mind. If you're 159 or less, you are looking at 4 times more major depression and up to 6 times more suicide. Your brain just isn't working as well. Okay? It's really amazing. I actually knew about this at at Columbia Medical School. They actually knew that in the 60s. It's not that new information, okay? But if it's low, then we have problems. And also 21% increase in premature deliveries if you're low on cholesterol, meaning 159 or less. So low cholesterol is the problem. What's the solution? Really, I've noted that coconut oil will raise your cholesterol. You know, for a vegan, what are you going to do? Coconut oil does really do a good job, and it gives you your mid-chain fatty acids too, MCT oils. So look at this: suicide, violent behavior, stroke, Parkinson's, neurological problems. This is a problem. Now, LDL cholesterol, huge drops. When we get it down to 82, it's really good. Less than 100 is good. They call 150 okay. Now, this is a comparison of the low-fat diet of Esselstyn and Dr. Esselstyn and Dr. Ornish with my approach. So obviously, I'm into, I support healthy plant fat because the DHA and EPA, okay, and cholesterol is not really a problem for us. So what were my results? At a plant fat of 25 to 45% plant fat. Look at the cholesterol, it's 159, okay, versus Dean Ornish at 252 with a 10% fat diet, or 10% fat diet with Dr. Esselstyn, people being on statins. And that's key. Triglycerides are the big problem for heart, and they're much lower on this diet that we're talking about. So, lots of references to support this. I'm just making a point by showing these to you to say this is heavily supported in the literature. This is the type, the importance of the long chain of omega-3s. You know, it's good for your brain, it's good for your heart. You live longer. You cut your breast cancer by 50%. Skin cancer is cut down, and prostate cancer is cut down. And I use them a lot in treating postpartum depression. I've seen women in postpartum depression for 10 years, and in 6 weeks on high DHA, gone. For manic depression and other chronic depression, EPA is really, really good. So I'm very pro, again, the long-chain omega-3s, but we need to get them from where the fish get theirs. We also find that the long-chain omega-3s improve pretty much all your neurotransmitters. GABA is a big one for relaxation, and acetylcholine is a really good one for memory. Okay, it's the preferred fuel for your heart. So we got a lot of things saying it's good. Now, sleep disturbance, 2 to 3 times higher. Radiation, I mentioned, 200% higher. 60% of kids age 12 or less got diabetes from the Fukushima disaster. You know, it's hard to get that information. So long-term radiation also affects your brain as well. We have ways to clear it. Now, as I said, we have probably 116 million diabetics in this country, pre-diabetics and diabetics. And about 600,000 are going to get amputated. Develop foot ulcers, and about 80,000 get amputated. In 4 years or so afterwards, they usually die. It's not good. Now, here are all the things, as we're summarizing this up. We have retinopathy, so degeneration. I have had on this program people who are legally blind, actually somebody from Long Island, legally blind, and regained their sight in 3 months. Just to give you an idea how powerful this is. It's mind-blowing. Neuropathy, people come in, they can't feel their feet, they're able to walk. That's why I sit there like cats, and here they are walking up a 6,000-foot mountain. Okay? In 3 weeks? Come on. It's the major cause of kidney death from kidney failure, atherosclerotic disease, obviously depression, poor digestion. I mentioned, that isn't mentioned much, cognitive decline, and also increasing cancer rates. So, and the cancers are endometrial cancer, ovarian cancer, breast cancer, prostate, and colon cancer, and pancreatic cancer. So this is about the brain shrinkage. For every 10 years, subjects had diabetes, their brains were 2 years older. Okay? And then I mentioned after 6 years, the brain size of diabetics decreased twice as fast. Heart attacks, main cause of death from diabetes is heart attacks. Okay? And this is what I'm saying. Increased rates above 86 will increase cancer, heart disease, lots of different things. That's the key kind of takeaway from that. This is what the blood sugar looks like when people are spiking. You want to see it actually just go up maybe 20, 25 points. These are classical diabetics. And that increases your ability of your body to respond. So it's important. If you have a blood sugar between, as I say, 100 to 125, you've got about 300% increase to getting a heart attack. Cancer, I mentioned, I'm just going to go through some of this. Beta cells start to die off at 110 degrees, a blood sugar of 110. So it's number one cause of adult onset diabetes, number one cause of kidney failure, number one cause of surgical amputation. It's a serious worldwide problem. When people follow the intervention, it works. This is what I already said. So, if people follow 4 out of 5 of the general preventative things, got 100% protection. That's worth considering with this kind of thing. So, what do? Well, I have to individualize the diet. Some people need a lower protein, some people need a higher protein, and the range of fat, plant fat is 25 to 45%. It's not one number because our genetics are different. Okay? So, as T. Colin Campbell said, radically changing our diets may be impractical, but it may be worth it. It's not that impractical. It's a good way to live. Okay, so these are 2 books that kind of do it. I've covered most of it. I just want to get to the, this is when people come in and they're running close to 400 blood sugars, and in 3 weeks, look what happens. That's the blue is normal. So we can make these changes pretty quickly. And this is the drop in fasting blood sugar. This is inflammation. You're dropping your inflammation, C-reactive, by 3-fold. And you saw this already, but I'm just reviewing it again. There is a cure for diabetes, 61% in 3 weeks. I didn't say 22 weeks, I said 6 weeks. Okay, with 100% no medication. If you're on insulin, 3 weeks, 24% are healed, 86% are off their insulin. And again, the type 1, literally 21% healed, 31% off insulin. Now here, we're summarizing it. So, we avoid all the carbohydrates except your leafy greens, and your non-starchy vegetable. Cooked is a big deal. We'll get to that in a second, but that's it. Sprouts are good. Sea vegetables are good at this point because of Fukushima. You got to do Maine coast sea vegetables, or it has to be from the Atlantic. It's a problem. The diet's slightly ketogenic, 25 to 35% carbohydrate. So this is the overall: 25 to 45% raw plant, 10 to 20% protein, and 25 to 35% carbohydrate. Once you're done with the diabetes, you can do 45%, but that's what we do. So, power of live food is tremendous in this process. That's what I want you to get. It really worked at 100%. And it really decreases the driving force behind all chronic disease, including diabetes, which is inflammation. I call it para-inflammation. There is a lot of weight loss there. That means you're not going to be in leptin resistance, which is really good, and you're not going to be inflamed. As I said, some people have lost up to 45 pounds in 3 weeks, just by going on a healthy diet. We're nothing special. It is the biblical diet, obviously, in Bereshit or Genesis 1:29. It's what the diet is. It's basically your fruits and vegetables and your nuts and seeds. All organics good because pesticides, herbicides definitely attack the beta cells of the pancreas. Moderate exercise, what do I mean? 20, 30 minutes, 3 to 5 times a week, like a fast walk. I mean, I do a lot more than that, not that much more, but I'm saying moderate. You got to get your 7 hours of sleep or your blood sugar does go up. Power of meditation. You have to individualize your diet. Some people need higher protein, some people need lower protein. That is key because we're genetically different. There's 20, 30,000 genes and maybe 200,000 gene variations. We are different, so you have to individualize it. There's no one diet for everybody. Huge mistake in the system, how people talk about it. You know, ketogenic diet or high-fat diet or you got to know you're a unique individual. And more than that, your needs change a little bit with age. But it is programmed on the chromosome 19. It says how much protein, how much fat, how much carbohydrate you should have. So it is a real thing, and you have to kind of trial and error to figure it out. The holistic effect of this whole approach, when it all comes together, and loving yourself enough to want to heal yourself. So that is the story. We're always taken by surprise by any new example of common sense. And this is, I'm adding this because I think it's important. You might feel bad about the way the world is. I'm an optimist, okay? But it'll be okay. Why? Because people like you are in this world. Think about it. We do make a difference. Okay? Even though I've shifted, we're not doing the whole center, I still see people for holistic healings when I'm there, because I'm more around the world and more giving talks. So, thank you very much. And remember, the world's a better place because of you. Keep that in mind. Well, we went over 1 hour and a half. But can we get 5 minutes for questions? Yeah. Okay, any questions anyone has? Yes? What we can do to protect from radiation? Well, yeah. So I'm going to give you an answer, which is I can't do this in 1 minute. We have a variety of protocols, and maybe there'll be a space where I can give a little talk. You know, it's like more than a little bit. We have homeopathics called rad-nude, take the radiation out. We have things that block the 5G EMF. You know, we have a thing called the quantum guard, that we have that actually seriously protects you from a lot of this, including walking right up to a cell tower and not being affected. So we have, a lot of stuff like that. But It's more than I can explain here. All right, but if you, on the mailing list, if you want, I have 11-page paper to give you some feeling for the 5G issue. Yes?
So is there a difference with the influence of high fructose corn syrup versus fructose in fruits? And do you allow like fruits in the diet, and which kinds and how much?
Okay, so it's kind of it is fructose total. The fructose corn syrup is it's just not as healthy, but we're talking 15 to 25 grams of fructose from whatever source. The body doesn't distinguish it as, so 2 bananas are going to put you over it. 3 kiwis are going to put you over that. So particularly when you're, for diabetes and treating cancer, we say no until your blood sugar is at least less than 100.
How about for cancer?
Cancer is, Brian and I are 100% in agreement, 0 fruit. Because cancer cells love fructose 10 times more than they love glucose.
Thank you for a great presentation. There's a conflict that I had. At one point you said a cholesterol of 280 or 260 in women 270 is very beneficial, less likely of mortality. And then on your
28% less mortality for women.
Right, but then on your slide you said 159, this diet and lifestyle drops your cholesterol to 159, which is protective.
Right.
So to me it seems kind of conflicting. Can you comment on that?
Well, what I'm trying to explain is there's an optimal range. Okay? And the big issue, particularly for vegans, is going to be a low cholesterol. That's what I'm saying. And we have things that happen with a low cholesterol that are not in our favor, as I just went through a whole bunch of them. So what I'm saying is try to keep your cholesterol above 160 to avoid 4 times more depression, 6 times more suicide, and neurological degeneration. Well, the New England Journal is talking about 160 to 260 doesn't affect you in terms of heart disease. I like 160 to 200, 210. That's just my kind of opinion. The research says 160 to 260. The big issue is everybody goes, gotta go low cholesterol. No, that's dangerous. Okay, we knew that back at Columbia Medical School, in terms of people's mental state, that low cholesterol does create more depression. Not good. It decreases your ability to pick up serotonin, your postsynaptic site. So we want to, does that answer your question? Okay. Okay, go ahead.
So, a recurring theme in my mind is the confusion with different diet claims and seemingly scientific support for them. So, we had presentations in the general media, PBS, etc. There's authorities talking about high-fat diets. Fat is your friend, fat is good. Another presenter saying that it's carbs that burn clean, and we're genetically evolutionarily designed to be consuming starches. Others say, well, that only came in 10,000 years ago, and then there's a grain brain, so it causes a lot of problems. So with the ones that espouse the grains are okay, the common denominator in all of these seem to be vegetables, good, but beyond that, it's absolutely no fat, no oils, and other ones fat like you. So.
Okay, it's a great question. One of my mentors, Pavel Arola, anyone ever heard from him? Okay. So he wrote a book called Are You Confused? So what I'm saying is there is a range according to our unique genetics. That's really key to understand why there's that much confusion. So there's a big difference between 25% fat and 45% fat in your diet. It's almost double. This depends on your chromosome 19. So there is some variation. So my message here is that you've got to explore what makes you at your optimum. Is that making more sense now? You can always find a few papers to make your point, because there is a range. Once you understand that, the real question is, we are unique individuals, and we have to find the diet that optimizes our situation. Does that, see, that's how we cut through that confusion. So you can always cite this. You can always say, you're always going to have 30% of the people doing okay with whatever you give them. You see, that's the key where it gets confusing. Because they're saying, well, our people, but they don't talk about the people who fail. But we have a certain amount of people who do really well on that. Well, that's your minimum of your 30%. Once you understand that, you can understand why there appears to be confusion if you're going to go, there's one diet that's for everybody. There is not one diet for everybody. We're not a bunch of cows. Kind of just get that idea. We are unique individuals. We have unique genetic subtle tendencies within the human race.
At the same time, though, it seems that none of us would benefit by animal products. So that those are, that we're not designed to eat them.
Animals.
Animal products, yeah.
Yeah. Correct. You know, what we're saying is people, I said, if you have 3% more, you're going to, you know, quadruple your rate of diabetes for women and double it for men. So we are better off in terms of the longevity studies, everything else. Vegans do live longer. That's what I could tell you. Now, it's going to vary. I'll give you one example because I don't want to go over my time and block the next person. This is myself. I noticed in studying literature that above the age of 60, 65, we actually need more protein. Now, just to be clear, at the middle ages, 45 to 60, something like that, 45 to 65, whatever, what we call middle age, it varies. People who have an excess of protein actually double the rate of mortality and quadruple the rate of cancer. Quadruple the rate of cancer. I did 5. Quadruple the rate of cancer. Got it? Age 45. Let's just say that. Then I read, hey, after age 65, you actually need more protein. I'm a person that doesn't really need much protein. I have been doing about 8%, which is even lower, okay? But even on that, even on a 6-day fast, I could do 600 push-ups. It's like, okay. So I'm a person that's going to say, you know, a lower protein, a little bit lower fat, higher carbohydrate. For myself, not for the other 70%. 70% need the higher protein, closer to 70 grams. I'm at 30 grams. So, but, okay, I got to make an adjustment here because I'm over 65. So a few years ago, I looked at that and said, okay, I'm going to take 1 tablespoon of blue-green algae a day. That's it. I've been stuck at 25 pull-ups. So in a month, I was at 45. I got up to over, in like 3 months, over 100, up to 100 pull-ups. One change. 1 tablespoon more of protein. So you have to titrate that. Does that make sense what I'm saying? So it's going to vary with your age a little bit.
Is there a test that can get you in the ballpark of what your optimum ratios
in my book, Conscious Eating, I have a test. It gives you an idea, 2 sets of tests, Kapha, Pitta, Vata, and also fast or slow oxidizers. Fast oxidizers need a higher protein, so slower oxidizers, like myself, need the lower protein, lower fat, high complex carbohydrate. And there's like a 30 questions. So you get you're unique. Don't take it personally, okay? Everyone's unique. And we have to treat ourselves that way if we're going to get optimum results. So,
Dr. Cousens, one more question.
Last question.
Yes. Thank you very much for your talk. Just piggybacking on that fact that it's very difficult to manage and treat everybody the same because everybody's unique. How would you manage a plant-based diet on patients or clients that are have Crohn's disease or have GI issues that they can't really tolerate a non-cooked type of diet?
Yeah, you can. You call blend the food.
So it'd be more of a juice.
Well, not juice, but blended food, because then that does a lot of digestion, takes the pressure off. Plus, there are different enzymes and things like that. Plus, the use of aloe vera. There's a few things, but the answer to your question is blend the food. Really makes a difference until the inflammation calms down.
Thank you.
Because it's a good question. It's a question that comes up a lot. Okay? Okay. Well, I'm happy to talk to you here, and I hope you get the idea that you are unique. Doesn't make you special, it makes you unique. We don't want to get into being special, okay? We're all equal souls. Okay, very good.